Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. As you know, the new cycle has started and it is time to apply to universities. But if you haven't taken your INBDE exam and you are super worried and you feel like you're behind, don't worry, this video is for you. And in this video I will explain why it's not too late to take INBDE now. I took my INBDE exam on March 5th, 2019, and I remember specifically the day because it was my husband's birthday and I spent it in the test center. My exam was supposed to be taken earlier, but there was some problem and some issue and it got cancelled, so I had to move it to March. I was hoping to receive my test results by the beginning of March so I could apply as soon as possible. By the way, if you don't know, I described this situation in one of my videos. I was filming videos live when I was in the process going through it, so if you're curious and if you want to watch that, link is going to be somewhere on the screen. Remember that TOEFL results come out about 3 to 4 weeks later, so your goal is to take your INBDE at least a month before the deadline of your desired program. For example, if you want to apply to Tufts, which deadline is in June, so it's one of the earlier schools, you should take your INBDE at least in May. That way you will have time to receive, and again, May is going to be pretty late, but you will have time to receive your result and still apply before the deadline. I always recommend to study for the exam for at least 2 to 3 months, because if you study for any longer, you will start forgetting what you have learned before. So we physically cannot retain information this long, so if you have studied for 6 months, there's no way in hell you will remember what you studied in your month 1 when you're at month 6. So don't take more than 2 months. And returning back to our Tufts example, if you do want to apply to that university, you would have to start studying for the exam and take the exam in May. You would have to start studying for the exam at least in around February. Best way to prepare for INBDE fast is to actually use one resource, one book that has everything you need to know and not jump around between books, because most books are structured in a way that they are telling you from beginning to end what is covered on INBDE. There are no books that only talk about one part of INBDE. They're usually created in a way to comprehensively prepare you for the exam. If you're jumping around from one resource to the other, they all have different systems, different text. Sometimes it can be helpful if you have more time and you have more time to prepare and review different types of information. That would be great. But if you're trying to prepare fast, use one resource, one book that goes very easily for you. Don't use the resource that's the most popular one. Use the one that works for you. For example, dental decks are so popular. People are obsessed with dental decks. They love them. So I try to use dental decks because, again, everybody's obsessed with them. Everybody said that it's the best thing in the world after sliced bread. But when I try to learn them, they're not exactly flashcards that you can like look at the question, try to reset it in your brain, flip around and read the answer. No, they're actually giant pieces of text on one side that you have to memorize. I don't even know why they're in the way of flashcards. It wasn't working for me. It wasn't convenient for me. I needed a book. I would lose those cards. I wouldn't be able to remember which card I was it was just not working out for me, and I wasted so much time trying to use this resource because it just wasn't right for my study style. This is why I recommend to look at them and kind of know what you like to use. I always like books. I always like to read a book. So my favorite book that I found when I was studying for my INBDE part 2, and I always recommend it, is Denton book. That's just the easiest way to read for me. It's just laid out like actual book, like paragraphs and stuff. I don't know why people decided that they needed to do bullet points everywhere and something completely unreadable, but Denton book actually has a pretty convenient way to lay information out, and again, it has everything from the beginning to the end. This is what you need to take this exam. Just read it and you should be okay. If you want to see what other kinds of resources are out there, I have a video all about my favorite books and all of the resources that are available right now for INBDE, so check that out. I will link it somewhere. Another tip to prepare for INBDE fast is to join a community of people who are also studying for the exam at about the same period of time. The best way to do it, if you don't actually have friends who are going through the same process next to you, is to go on Facebook groups. And Facebook groups actually worked really well for me. I loved those Facebook groups. There was so much information. People were taking the exam and telling what they felt and how was the exam, how did the exam go for them right after they came out of the test center. So that was awesome. They first shared when their results came out, and they shared the resources that they used and what was most helpful and what was least helpful. So that was an amazing resource. Or closed Facebook groups that you have to join and wait to be admitted. There are always a Facebook group for each year, so there are many of them. There's no specific group that I can link. They change all the time, so for each specific year there is a separate group usually. And I know Facebook is dying and nobody's on Facebook anymore, but that's about the only reason to join. That was the only thing that was super helpful for me in those closed Facebook groups. People share so much and it was absolutely helpful. And if you have like a week or two to study for the exam, that is the first place I would go. Now that this is the finish line, this is a stretch, you need to study for the exam fast. Forget about any life or any part of your application now. Just focus on that one thing. You will have time to fill in your cabin. You will have time to do everything else. Just focus on INBDE. This is your life now. Make a study plan and stick to it. Like, tell yourself that you're gonna read, like, take the book. If you have a month, divide it into 30 pieces, of however many chapters, however many pages there are, and tell yourself that I will read, understand, and memorize this portion this day, and stick to it. This is what's important now. This is the final stretch. You can do it. Nothing else matters. Just do this. Another most helpful tip is to take as many practice exams as possible. Practice exams will help you fish out the information that you don't know that you don't know it. This is complicated, but when you take a test, you may have read the entire book and you may think you know everything, but then you take a test and it asks you the specific pinpoint question that you are like, ooh, that chapter didn't cover it, or I didn't understand that part exactly. And you don't know that you don't know it until you actually take a practice test and figure that out. Usually practice tests are a little more difficult than the test itself, so don't freak out if you don't know anything. For example, anything Kaplan always is harder than the test. Their questions are completely bizarre, but that's a good thing. Sometimes I would use Kaplan practice tests if you're just beginning and you kind of want to figure out what's your area of I don't know anything about, and what's your area I shouldn't even study for it because I know it by heart. But if you're coming closer to the exam and actually want to know what's more practical, like what is actually on the exam, use pre-released exam versions. So there's always a released exam on American Dental Student Association websites that were there since like the 80s. Those tests are literally from like 60s and 70s. It does not matter if they're for INBDE and somebody gave you released exams from INBDE and not INBDE. It does not matter because dentistry itself did not change, just the format did. So questions still accurate. So questions, obviously those questions will not be exact questions on the exam, so it doesn't really matter if it's from INBDE or from INBDE. Just figure out what concepts you don't know. The next step is to actually take care of yourself during this process. Stop studying a few days before the exam. Just stop. Like if you have 1 or 2 days before the exam, burn your books. Don't even look at them, because you need time to give time to your brain to actually process the information you just threw into it. If you study up until the exam and you don't take any breaks, you will just come there and be overwhelmed by the amount of information in your head. Definitely make sure you sleep at night like a normal person and not study all night, because that's not helping anybody. Of course, there are people who are night owls and they study all night, but at least take time during the day to sleep, because your information, all of the information in the world, is processing in our brain during the time that we actually rest. So even though it feels like, oh my god, my exam's tomorrow, what am I gonna do? And tons of people actually message me on Instagram and tell me, my exam is in 72 hours. What should I review? And I always say, nothing. Review nothing. Watch a nice TV show. Make yourself a delicious cup of tea and just chill. And that's the best advice, because you will not learn anything new in 72 hours. If you were studying for 2 months, what do you think you're gonna learn in a day? Not much. Like, you can't review everything you have learned in 72 hours, and if you don't know something, you just forget it. It's just not your subject. Forget about it. You will not learn it now. So just give yourself some time to process what you've learned, and for your brain to actually compartmentalize it so you can easily bring it up when you need it during the exam. I hope you found this video helpful, you guys. If you are studying for the INBDE now and you are taking it soon, definitely don't worry. You have plenty of time. I submitted my first application in April, and I still got in to plenty of schools. So you are definitely on track. You are not behind. Don't have fear of missing out. You're not missing out on anything. The cycle is going to be there for a year. Apply as soon as possible, as soon as you receive your results, but don't stress about it. And I'm sure you are gonna nail it. It's gonna be so good when you've received that pass. You're just gonna be feeling so good. So good luck on your exam. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you don't know yet, even though I say it in every video of mine, I'm starting a one-on-one guidance program. So if you don't know how to apply, worry about your application, don't know how to do interviews, don't know how to write your personal statement, or you're not super confident about it, maybe you didn't get in the last cycle and want to know what to improve and want a fresh set of eyes on your application, check the link in the description. I'm there for you. I would love to help you out. And again, I'll see you in my next videos. Bye, guys.